Joshi, you had an interview recently with Jules Turpak, and Jules has a very different life experience and perspective than Madeline, even though they nominally kind of are orbiting around the same sector, right? Tell us a little bit about your interview with Jules.
Sure. So, at IFTF, we're always looking at a wide variety of perspectives to understand that multiverse of the future, because there is no one future and it's not one experience we're going to be having. So we're always particularly interested in the experiences and outlooks of young people, because they'll be the inhabitants of the future as well as the workforce of the future. So we've been talking to a lot of young people who are working in new types of work that are just being created and are just still emerging. And social media content creators are particularly interesting to us, not just because they're working in a new emerging labor market, but because as social media content creators, these workers are already working with AI, the content creation AI algorithms that really determine their reach and ultimately their success in their career. So as Madeline mentioned earlier, content creators are not protected by any union. So they're in this unique position of navigating their careers, working on technology platforms that essentially set all the rules in which they operate. So we reached out to Jules Turpak, a content creator whose channel Growing Digital is all about growing up and growing into a digital economy. And Jules has written for the Washington Post. She's co-hosted a podcast with Andrew Yang. She recently interviewed Noam Chomsky for a masterclass. So she's been steadily growing her digital career. And we talked to Jules about her journey as a content creator, what it's like to have her success be dependent on an AI curation algorithm, and also how she's thinking about generative AI. Is it going to be a new powerful tool for her as a creator, or could AI-powered channels and even synthetic AI influencers be her new competition? And we also talked with Jules about a new TikTok trend that we've been tracking as a really interesting signal of change that reflects some of the more strange futures we might be entering into.
All right, let's take a look at that.
Hello, I'd like to welcome Jules Turpak to our show today. I came across Jules on her TikTok series, Growing Digital, that unpacks recent trends in technology and social media and culture. And Jules also has a really active presence on Twitter, aka X, and YouTube as well. At IFTF, we're always interested in fresh perspectives on the future, and Jules brings a really fresh voice into futures forecasting. Give us a little bit of your background, just like I know you've been online for many years. Talk about kind of the different platforms that you've worked with and kind of where you are today.
Yeah, so I was born in 1997, which was kind of the first Gen Z year that people say. I had grown up, chronically online. I was posting YouTube videos by the age of 10, which I do not recommend letting your kids do. My digital footprint is pretty scary. I also grew a Tumblr page in middle school and early high school, and I had access to my Tumblr, and it is very scary what I was posting on there at such a young age. And then in high school and college, I grew topic-based Instagram pages. For example, my one that grew the most was based on health and wellness. And then out of college, was right as I was leaving college towards the end, was the rise of TikTok in 2019. And I was just fascinated by this. And just my experience growing up with every platform as these platforms grew from the start, I was just like, it made me realize, oh, wow, we are the first generation to grow up with these platforms from our, first of all, adolescence, and also just grow up ingrained in the internet to the extent that we did. And I never really saw people talking about that. So on TikTok, I started talking about it. And it's really resonating with people because, I feel like our generation just wasn't conscious of how wild that is that we were born into that, and how kind of unique of an experience that it is, not for better or not for worse necessarily. It's just a different experience. And trying to learn how to navigate that, especially since the pandemic and our lives had become so much more online than they were before. I think before the pandemic, people could still kind of deem social media just a fun, silly thing. You follow your friends and family, but now it is becoming increasingly about, social globalization in the way. Is how I like to put it, is your friends and the people you pay attention to are more so becoming strangers, people that you meet online and come across via algorithms. And also just your work life, you're utilizing the internet more and more for your side hustles. People are building their careers predominantly online. That's been prevalent across generations, but more and more you see there's that stat that goes around all the time of 60 to 70% of kids today say they want an online career.
Your success as a content creator comes down to kind of what the AI chooses, or how well you are able to play with the AI or understand it or reverse engineer it. So talk a little bit about like what's the sustainability of building a career as a content creator is versus like a momentary flash in the pan where you have a moment of virality?
I think the current statistic out there is that the average lifespan quotes like of a creator who goes like all in on their work online is, I think, about 2 years. There's this kind of growing conversation right now about the creator middle class, people who aren't making like the huge bucks on social media platforms, but have been able to sustain a full-time living, how that is becoming harder to sustain because, like we're saying, the normalcy of virality and how many eyes, like how many pieces of content and how many people we are seeing a day. When social media used to be more prompted by you, like a YouTube search bar, like a follower list, now these platforms are mostly recommended and like algorithmic feeds, recommendation algorithm feeds. You're just seeing more and more people that you're not necessarily opting into yourself. So it's becoming more about the individual content than it is about necessarily the person in a lot of ways. But that's also not fully true. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but it definitely goes into this conversation of the weakening creator middle class, the top of the top continuously growing, the Mr. Beast of the world, the Logan Pauls, the MKBHDs, they can continue, they're growing, super quickly. They're able to invest so much more money. It feels almost impossible to keep up with how they are innovating because they have become so big. And then there's the people who, it's like just a thing that complements their everyday life, or it's kind of like a side hustle thing that brings in some money, but they can't go full time into it. It's hard to sustain when it comes to the algorithm, and it's this conversation that a lot of people who create careers online, like Tim Ferriss has talked about this. He's had more longevity in the online space of you're trying to find your 1,000 true fans in a way. So these people who really align with what you do and will kind of follow you where you go and subscribe to your work and everything, rather than trying to necessarily appeal to the masses, because the masses are more of a volatile type of audience to attune to. So really trying to find your core audience who will buy into your products and everything, because that's a conversation amongst creators too, is like initially maybe you can have those viral moments for a year or two and feed off of AdSense to sustain yourself for a living, but that can only last so long, and you want to kind of branch off into different streams of income with your platform at the helm and bringing people into that. So
it's interesting. So we have a history of social media of, being curated essentially by algorithms, by AI algorithms. And then now we're starting to see with generative AI, the ability to generate content, generate very realistic looking synthetic humans with realistic sounding voices that can, with scripts that have been generated by large language models that are topical, often insightful, sometimes funny or flirty, depending on what the character you're trying to put forth. So I'm curious what you're seeing, like, right? So we see like AI curated social media. Now we're kind of about to see AI generated social media. Talk to me about like examples of kind of the AI generated social media that you're seeing and what you see maybe for that intersection.
You bring up synthetic humans. I was going to say that's kind of my initial answer. On Twitter, I've been seeing a lot of startups working on that, synthetic humans, mostly for yourself. In the same way that right now there's a platform called Descript. It started as a podcasting platform, but now has integrated video. You're able to get like an AI duplicate of your voice. And let's say you forgot to say a sentence in your podcast or whatever, you write it in, it helps you bring that to life.
So it actually generates your voice. It trains on your voice and then can have you say anything that you didn't say.
Exactly. Which is, if casually, if I'm like, oh yeah, I did forget to say that, it's fun. The bigger implications are a little, more wishy-washy than just the creator world. When it comes to the video aspect of it, again, the synthetic humans, there's been something called Synthesia, which has kind of been presentation-like. It's very robotic. The synthetic human is not moving, but now these new ones, they are more expressive and they can do the hand motions and the blinks and everything like that. And when I first think about that, that's terrifying in a lot of ways. But then to get my idea out to the world, I have to sit in front of a camera and record for hours upon hours. And that in itself feels robotic like in a lot of ways. And my favorite part of creating my work is the research, is the idea generation, and creating the storyline. I don't necessarily love sitting in front of a camera for hours and recording. I would happily feed that to my synthetic human if it comes off the same expressiveness as me.
Gang gang, ice cream's so good. You got me feeling like a cowgirl. What? Oh, I'm not drunk. These are catchphrases that are now part of a brand new online trend that is, yeah, every bit as crazy as it sounds.
Gang gang, gang gang, gang gang. Ice cream so good. Gang gang, gang gang.
Welcome to the wild world of NPC streaming.
Hee haw, yes, you got me feeling like a cowgirl. And you ready to slay huh, slay huh, slay huh.
The incredible trend features TikTokers live streaming themselves while they interact with fans.
Marshmallow. Crunchy corn, yum!
Viewers shower NPC streamers with virtual gifts they've purchased from TikTok. Things like ice cream cones, roses, and hearts appearing on screens as icons as the streamer reacts with either a catchphrase or gesture.
Hot dog, yum!
So people can give these gifts that are maybe, you know, a penny, but then some of them go way up to like $300 or $400 or even $500 for one. You just click on a gift and like I think there's like a universe or a galaxy. So this is like a $500 tip that you're giving somebody, right? I mean, it's mostly roses and ice cream, I've noticed, but
Yeah, mostly the dollar ones.
so Pinky Doll, I believe, was kind of one of the originators of this.
People became fascinated by it and started going over to her TikTok, and she's been getting so many viewers that she's been making $7,000 a day at some points. So for her, she is kind of the epitome of this NPC TikTok trend, but then you saw it ripple through culture. And when you press a TikTok live, you can scroll live feeds the same way you can any video on TikTok. And it was wild. I scrolled through maybe 100 as a test, and I kid you not, probably 60 out of the 100 I scrolled through were people now emulating this NPC TikTok live trend. But I haven't done it in the past week, so that was kind of the peak of the trend. I'm interested to see now if like what percent of the 100 I go through are still those NPC trends, or if it truly was a trend, or if it is sustainable, and if it is sustainable for like what percent of people.
I think it was like about a month ago that Nerdy Winter, another user, revealed how much Pinky Doll was making and made her own TikTok saying like, hey, she's making a lot of money. I'm going to start doing this. And that kind of opened it up. And suddenly all these other creators realized, oh, this is a big moneymaker. Literally, as you said, like people are making hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in a couple hours. I mean, some of these streamers, it seems like they're on all day now. Like, you know, from I've seen there's a mama one where she holds her baby and she's being a robotic TikToker, like playing the NPC
Bringing the baby into it. Is it a real baby?
It's a real baby.
Thank you for the rose.
I think what's fascinating, there's a couple things. Number one, that, you know, that anybody is watching this. Number two, that people are paying to watch it, sometimes tens of dollars, if not hundreds of dollars. It seems quite interesting that this is a moment where basically all of humanity is already worried about being replaced by AI. And then here we have this new genre of entertainment that people are paying for, where it's humans imitating AI and doing it poorly. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you see this intersection of this moment where AI is potentially coming to take our jobs, and now people are like creating jobs being AI?
Some people, I guess, would argue that people are trying to mimic AI in order to compete with it. You know, that's like Elon Musk's argument with Neuralink, is that you'll have to get Neuralink in order to compete with these platforms. Like you have to embody noble platforms as in artificial intelligence, like you have to embody that game in order to continue on. So it's almost like that's what people are doing. It is kind of the same thing. And it's hard. It's like, I do not put any hate onto, someone like Pinky Doll or whoever who's doing this. Would I personally decide to play into this ecosystem? No, but I get that she was talking about how she was laid off and she just needed to find ways to support herself and her son. So she opted into this and it's worked for her. It is definitely, again, a short-term game, and I don't think a lot of long-term reward comes from short-term games. But I can't blame people for needing to make money to sustain themselves, right? And at the end of the day, it puts responsibility on us as consumers of like, yeah, you can opt into this or not. But again, just trying to be as conscious as possible.
Yeah, I think just to kind of follow up, wrap up here, I'm just curious, like, given this, existing culture of algorithmic content creation that you've been involved in, and now we're entering into this period of generative AI with AI doing all sorts of different things. I mean, how do you think today, just obviously you can't represent a whole generation, but just you do have a better insight into it than me as a Gen Xer. How do you think Gen Zers today are thinking about their career at this moment where AI is such a big part of our environment right now?
I think people have, of course, a lot of question marks. Like you said earlier, there's this sentiment of, is AI going to do things better than us? And is it going to take over? And our company is going to be completely AI run in terms of not needing to utilize any individuals. And that's scary. I think at the end of the day, when we look at these trends of 60 to 70% of kids today wanting to be influencers, creators, it just comes down to people wanting autonomy and people wanting security. They see, again, the biggest creators and aspire to that, but it's not, you have to be a little more realistic. I think we have to figure out, and it's something being discussed now, of what do we want our relationship with work to be? There's this weird sentiment around, okay, people don't want to work, but then they're scared because of AI. It's like, it all comes down to money and a lack of security at the end of the day that people are worried about. You think about your childhood and you have a lot more time on your hands, and you find how to ideally utilize that time, and you find how to connect with others and everything. Like, I'm not necessarily too scared about the work element if that somehow goes away, but just helping people find security financially is going to be what's most important. But I think also when it comes to generative AI and companies in general, should we allow companies to be 100% AI run? And like, should a certain percent of profits have to go to humans in some way? It kind of comes that into play too. I've seen a ton of YouTube channels come about that, utilize generative AI in their scripting, utilize generative AI in their video making, and they are putting out like 100 videos per day, just machine-like, chugging out videos that are catering to the algorithm. Should there be content limits so that things can be more human? Because it is not humanly possible for someone to put out 100 decent quality videos on YouTube per day. Like, trying to create these incentives on platforms to make them as human as possible and make them as fair as possible when it comes to, again, competing with machines, because we can't compete without output. It's not humanly possible, again. So I think just trying to find the boundaries and how to make the relationship complementary is what people are worried about right now, because we don't know the answers. We haven't seen like a big example of AI integration into work yet that really like wipes the people out of the company. So I think people are just trying to figure out solutions for how to make it complementary.
All right.
Very interesting. So I'm curious, Toshi, to bring you back on stage also, have you seen this NPC TikTok trend continue, or do you think this is just a fad?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to explain for our viewers at home what NPC stands for. It stands for non-player character. It's the characters in the back of a video game who aren't the ones you're really interacting with, that tend to just be kind of floating there. You'll notice in a lot of those NPC videos, people are just kind of going like this, which is kind of like these hold positions for the NPCs. But yes, this is a trend, has not only continued to grow, I would say it's turning into a genre on TikTok. We've been tracking it for over 2 months, and even just checked yesterday, there are more TikTokers getting creative with their new characters and catchphrases, and they're making real money. And some folks would say these creators are actually gaming the TikTok algorithm to build a real job for themselves, well, at least for as long as they're able to maintain their audience. We also learned, interestingly, it's important to point out that TikTok is making 50% of this revenue that these TikTokers are making. They're taking a healthy, hearty chunk of, so they're having incentives to also kind of feature and curate this kind of trend as well. And then another really important point I just want to mention is that as we dug a little bit deeper into this story, folks, you might have heard about Pinky Doll. She's kind of credited as like the originator of this trend a couple of months ago. We looked a little bit deeper into it. Turns out a Japanese creator called Natsuo Coco telco, has been doing this since 2021. So as often happens, Americans are getting credit for something that was created elsewhere, but it certainly has taken, taken hold on the TikTok community.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that. And there's potentially a lot to unpack here. We are in the need to kind of keep moving our conversation, but before we do, we want to hear from the audience a little bit. So Suzanne, do we have another poll for folks?
We do, and we're very curious to see how is AI showing up in your workplace. So let's get this poll rolling. How is AI showing up in your workplace and work life? Is it showing up not at all, perhaps? Or are people starting to talk about this a little bit? Maybe even starting to experiment? Are you using it on a daily basis? Maybe aggressively adapting and adopting these new types of systems? So, and Dylan, I'm going to rely on you to let me know when we have critical mass on our results.
Yeah, we've got just about half the folks have answered, so we'll give another few seconds. It's fun watching these just stream in dozens a second. So let's wait until we get about 70% of our audience here, though it's starting to stabilize out a little bit. All right, I'm going to call it.
And we're
there.
pretty sure none of these are bots, right?
we can't vouch for that. We're pretty sure. They had the registration form wasn't nothing, so we hope that it took us some time. But you can actually see the results here. So we got an interesting mix. So not very many people saying AI is not showing up in their work at all, which is interesting. And then we've got a kind of, yeah, sorry, say that again.
Yeah, it's very evenly distributed kind of in this kind of little arc place with the center being almost half of them, right?
Yeah,
people are experimenting, and I would argue humanity is conducting the world's largest, fastest technology experiment in the next year. So I think that's not unusual that we're seeing people are experimenting. No one knows where this future is going, and we're going to have to experiment to see what it can do.
No, and we've got 20% of folks in our audience today, maybe a kind of self-selective audience, let's assume, but 20%, a fifth of folks using it every single day. And those aren't the folks, the 7% that are aggressively investing in adoption. So yeah, fewer than only 25% not really engaging with it yet. So that is really interesting for us to see. Thank you both so much, Toshi and Ben. Thank you so much for joining us.